Tiana's Bayou adventure at Disney Parks and Resorts can't seem to get up and running and get those log flumes flowing. And the merch that they can't offer for the ride, well, it seems that Disney might have reversed course. There was a character that was eliminated from the ride itself, a character from Princess and the Frog that now appears to have returned. Let's talk about who's back from the other side here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is my favorite theme park expert, Mr. VashSky. Vash, you doing all right today?
Well, I'm doing much better now. Favorite theme park expert? You're too kind, Jonas. Kinder than that, though.
It's true though. Sometimes culture. He's one of my favorite people, and he comments on theme parks. But definitely my favorite theme park expert, that Mr. VashSky. You should all listen to Vash about everything he talks about. With that being said, though, let's go to something that Marvin said over there. Marvin Montanero. On July 7th, on That Park Place, media blames the failure of Tiana's Bayou adventure on Christians. This is an article I think you should read. It's a very interesting take on the cultural changes there at the Walt Disney Company and some of the reactions online to how Tiana's was handled. There was a prominent character missing from the ride when they did Tiana's Bayou adventure, and that being DrFacilier. As you can see him on the screen there. He was in the movie and he was a prominent part of the movie, and they eliminated him and something that went with him from the ride. Vash, do you want to explain a little bit here?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I think a lot of people thought when they heard Princess and the Frog ride that all of the characters would actually be featured in that Princess and the Frog attraction. That being, Louis the Alligator, Tiana herself, Prince Naveen, and of course the villain of the film, DrFacilier. But that's not quite what we got. In fact, what we got was a sequel attraction that you might be thinking, well, maybe perhaps doesn't actually fit the storyline that these Disney Imagineers have crafted so expertly. Yes, let's get all the band together and get them down to New Orleans. That's the story for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. That perhaps DrFacilier doesn't fit in that because, well, it is a sequel attraction. Yet, Ray is featured in the attraction, at least in audio form. So then becomes, well, if Ray can be featured in that way, then why can't necessarily DrFacilier come back from the other side and make an appearance to what is an otherwise kind of boring attraction?
Yeah, I agree. So this is something that we kind of laugh at Imagineering from outside of what they do. They don't want to do a book report ride. They've somehow gotten it into their heads that book report rides are a bad thing. No one cares if it's a book report ride. They care if it's a good ride. So in this case, instead of doing a book report ride, they've essentially done a ride with little to no story. It is, we're going to get a band together, or they're looking for the special spice. It kind of alternates, and somehow, even for a theme park ride, the story is still disjointed. For a company that really likes to follow the idea of storyline in their rides, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, I'm going to say is, well, it's a failure in that aspect. Forgive me if you've worked on this ride and you're personally offended by that. It's y'all's fault, because at the Disney Company, we tell stories. Kind of a swing and a miss on this one. I want to go to specifically one aspect of this ride here. Not content with erasing racism from its theme parks, Disney has apparently sought to use its magic to make the film's positive but controversial rendering of voodoo in The Princess and the Frog disappear, Pinsky said. Literally out of sight in typical Disney fashion, the company has virtually eliminated the film's voodoo portrayal, which offended some evangelical Christian theatergoers. In fact, the dark voodoo depiction central to the plot of The Princess and the Frog appears almost nowhere on the 10-minute ride. The article is actually kind of refuting what he's saying here, but it goes to something that did happen. They eliminated voodoo from the attraction. And with that, they eliminated DrFacilier from the attraction. And so that ride hill that we would all be assuming would be the Are You Ready portion of I've Got Friends on the Other Side. Great song. Great Disney villain song done by Randy Newman and voiced by Keith David. What an amazing voice Keith David has. And that lift hill now has a Dig a Little Deeper Afro-Cuban version, which also does not make sense in the era that it was. And forgive me, if you've heard one Afro-Cuban jam, you have heard many Afro-Cuban jams. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but it's also okay. But Dig a Little Deeper is the song that you're here for. And that is the one that is a little bit closer to some of the tones that you would assume Tiana's Bayou Adventure is going for. Maybe they just didn't want it competing with Special Spice. And the less said about Special Spice, the better. They also eliminated the voodooosity, I'm making up a word here, of a different character at the same time, that being Mama Odie. Vash, I think you might have a little bit about that.
Absolutely. This was a tweet back in February 13, 2024 from Mouse Info that was given a press release on this attraction. And yes, they were, at this point in time, Disney was highlighting the fact that Mama Odie was going to be this grand audio animatronic that you could see ascending up a lift hill there. But look at how they described her. They described her as a 200-year-old Bayou fairy godmother. Very, very different from her description in the original film, Princess and the Frog, where she was described as a voodoo priestess. I believe they had other names or titles for her as well featured in that film, but they've done away with that completely. So even the representation of voodoo that they do have in the attraction, they have rebranded it. And any overt representation to voodoo, well, through DrFacilier, they have completely removed and shut out. So that's the key point to be made here.
Yes. And so you guys might be wondering, why are we rehashing this particular thing? We've had more subscribers joining us since then, and maybe you all aren't aware of it, but DrFacilier has been a little bit more controversial. You haven't seen him as often in the representation in the villain shows. Well, we're going to go over here to a tweet. This one from Five Fires, otherwise known as @TheCalibay. This fella right here, as you can see on the right, is that DrFacilier, and they're fine selling his merchandise for $200 a pop right here. Let's zoom in right there. DrFacilier medium figurine for $199. I'm going to say that's dollars, even though there's no dollar sign attached to it. Right next to the medium figurine of Tiana's Bayou Adventure water tower here, and that one's got Prince Naveen and of course Tiana in the cast of critters that they added to the ride. Looks like there's a frog up here playing a horn. Is that Raymond up there as well? Who knows? But I think this is interesting that Disney can consider this character to be unacceptable in some way, but then they're happy to sell a $200 piece of merchandise for that supposed unacceptable character. By the way, don't misunderstand me here. It is, of course, DrFacilier and then the Shadow Man, who is the real villain of the story. But of course, maybe it's a cautionary tale for DrFacilier to not mess around with the Shadow Man. I don't know. What do you think about this, Vash? Is Disney being inconsistent here, or are they finally changing their minds?
I don't know if they're changing their minds. I think they're being inconsistent. I think food, beverage, retail, they're looking to sell product. They're looking to, move items off of store shelves right here. So I don't think they get into the intricacies of, I don't know, what's acceptable, what's not through a lens and, through focus group testing and all these different things that Disney employs in order to get their way on what they want in their parks and what they don't want in their parks. I think from merchandising's or consumer products point of view, it's just like, look, whatever sells. Whereas Disney, especially led by the Stories Matter initiative, took the reins on the project, that being Tiana's Bayou Adventure, they were looking out for other things, not ridership not being one of them.
Well, yeah, of course, Stories Matter. This is an excellent example. Stories Matter has a problem with Peter Pan, but Peter Pan, for whatever reason, is one of the most popular themes for an attraction at any Disney park, at any area where they are. Obviously, there's a new Peter Pan attraction out there at Tokyo Disneyland, for instance. So they have a problem, but they also would very much like to move merchandise here. So
yes.
And I wonder if the merchandise people are completely disconnected from the Stories Matter people, if that argument has to come up. Because, for instance, what's his name? Brer Rabbit appeared on Walt Disney World merchandise longer than that attraction was closed down. And after Tiana's Bayou Adventure premiered, I believe we were still finding signs of Brer Rabbit on merchandise. Little signs. It wasn't primary Brer Rabbit merchandise, but he would be featured in collages and featured in moments where he would just pop up in the corner of the thing. If it was like all the mountains at Walt Disney World.
So Dr. Facilier is really interesting in that he was featured at a time for like Halloween events and so
Absolutely.
forth.
One of the more popular characters in that. They would focus on him in the advertising for those events.
Right. And so it was really weird, I think, for a lot of people when Dr. Facilier wasn't featured in the attraction, because they didn't really know the context by which by which it was removed from that attraction. Yes, you know, the apologists will say, well, it's the storyline, don't you see? It's this post chapter story that they've gone with. But again, and some people have come to the realization that it's like, maybe that was simply a narrative that Disney injected in order to not make it seem so awkward that Dr. Facilier wasn't featured in that attraction at all. One could look at it that way. And I think that's what was employed here. When you look at Dr. Facilier merch and how he was featured in prior shows, I believe around the time that Princess and the Frog actually came out back in 2009, he was prominently featured in a show actually that was on the Mark Twain, and I believe the Liberty Bell in Magic Kingdom, but maybe somebody could correct me on that. Dr. Facilier played a big role in that show, and he was a beloved figure as part of that show. So to see him removed in the way that he has really been alarming. Now, it hasn't been to zip-a-dee-doo-dah levels, let's say, or Splash Mountain levels, as you know, they're still selling the merchandise here. But it just does kind of show you, and I think this kind of highlights the kind of I don't know, the differences, let's say, between the mindset of consumer products and maybe Imagineering as it's below the Story Matter initiative.
So you're saying that if a bunch of people buy Dr. Facilier merchandise, maybe Disney will stop this foolishness and come on home?
maybe they will. But it's possible. I'm not sure. Look, Tiana's by Adventure, I think, needs help. I think needs work. I think nobody is really satisfied with its current iteration as it stands right now. Now, you know, we know somebody, Jonas, who has ridden the attraction maybe more than 100 times, but which is surprising. You know, it has its fans. But I think a lot of people, even the people who do like the attraction, believe it could stand to see improvement. So, hey, if Dr. Facilier merch maybe sells to a great extent, maybe that signals Disney, hey, you know, perhaps we shouldn't have backed up.
I'll admit, there are some rides, and I'm not going to name the ride, that is one that I was not a fan of, but was an excellent way to get cooled down on a summer's day. You know, that happens as well. Sometimes you ride them because you have an appreciation of the theme parks and not necessarily thinking that ride is a grade A. But Tiana's Bayou Adventure, for whatever reason, does not seem to be. It's either the popularity or the fact that people don't want to break down on a ride. It doesn't seem to be as popular as it should be there for the Disney parks. And, you know, more power to them if they decide they're going to try to fix this thing. I do notice there's a little bit more paint on the Tiana's food sign on that water tower. It is a two-tone. It is a white against a wooden background. Maybe that's not two-toned on the actual article there. But that being said, we want to throw this to our audience. Do you guys appreciate that they're putting Dr. Facilier merch in the theme parks, even if it is at a ridiculous $200 a pop level? Or is this something where, you know, they're fine to take your money while judging you? I don't know. Would love to know your thoughts on that in the comment section down below. Of course, like this video if you like this video. And if you haven't done it yet, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.